Good afternoon and welcome, and thanks for coming to join us today. Given an opportunity today to talk at least a little bit about netting technology and predation control. We've been working with FISA for many years in supplying netting for our commercial fishing sector, and so when Gael wanted to start working with netting in aquaculture, it made sense to go to somebody we know and trust, and we have know the quality is high. So today we've invited Yoni along, who's the sales director from FISA, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the development of materials and changing materials and how that's helping with predation control. But just before we start that, Yoni, I just wonder if you could tell us maybe a little bit about the history of FISA and how it's come about.
Okay, so FISA, we're a factory, we're located in Peru, in Lima, the capital. It's been around since 1943. Traditionally, it was a fishing net factory made for the local fishing market in Peru. Peru is a big producer of fish meal, and we fish anchovy netting there. In the 80s, it got taken over by the current shareholders, FISA, and that's when it really began its expansion, going into aquaculture, trawl netting, and all types of other netting. Produced in FISA, we produce knotted netting, twisted knotted netting, knotless netting, twisted knotless netting, braided knotted netting, and we use all the different fibers. So there's a lot of different fibers which you're using, which are polyester, HDPE, nylon, multi-filament polypropylene. So it's really, we consider ourselves a factory which is like a one-stop shop. We're also vertically integrated, so we extrude our own polyethylene. We make the netting using the filaments, and then we've also got a net yard where we assemble what the products that the customers are asking for, like the salmon cages.
So that vertical integration, Yoni, allows you to have a much stricter quality control. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Yeah.
Everything is, we're ISO certified, and everything that we do at the factory, we can trace it down from the very beginning, from the filament, where it's all tested, all the way to the final product. And through all the different processes, it's tagged, and we can control everything.
Okay. Good. And aquaculture specifically, how long has FISA been producing netting for aquaculture?
So for the aquaculture industry, we started really in the 90s when in Chilean markets started growing for salmon farming. So that's when FISA went into the aquaculture in there. Since then we've grown where we sell for netting for aquaculture all across the globe, in Canada, Scotland. We do for the Africa, we do the sea bass, sea bream, tilapia markets as well.
Okay. So I mean, with 30 years experience, you can see why we chose to turn to FISA and working in all the areas that you're very familiar with the aquaculture industry, and of course here in Scotland, but across Europe, South America and North America, they're all quite important markets for secure netting for aquaculture. And of course in 30 years we've seen a lot of change, and in 30 years you've seen a lot of change in material choices, so maybe you could tell us what's happened in FISA in the last 30 years from development of material and how it's progressed.
Okay, yeah, there's been many changes in the market, which is why part of the reason why we offer so many different products. When we traditionally started with the salmon farming, like in most of the world, it was just a market that used rash shell, knotless, nylon netting, which is a good product. However, as they grew, the markets have changed a lot. They realized that there were more demands on the pens, so the thickness of the nets would grow over time to accommodate needing the better breaking strength. There was more abrasion resistance needed. So as the customers saw it, first they started growing and using thicker twine sizes, which what we call a denier in netting. And then they realized that the structural changes, they would add more horizontal, vertical ropes on the cages to accommodate the extra strength that was needed. But then over time also they realized that as working together with us, with FISA, and us being close with the customer, we realized that there were other ways to improve and maybe provide other filaments. So that's when we were able to introduce polyester. At first polyester came in more because they were looking for something more competitive, but they also needed a better abrasion resistance. So polyester answered those questions very well in terms of better abrasion resistance and offering a more competitive price to that of nylon. As they advanced further the market, like installing net washers and cleaning on situ, the customer realized that they needed a better abrasion and also something for the machine so it would be easier for them to clean off the fouling. So that's when we started introducing as well the HDPE, which is our super product. And that's come into the market and has become very popular now, especially with the washing and net washing.
Okay, interesting. So Yoni was explaining to me today as well that within the factory they also have their ability to manufacture their own ropes, and so again they're ensuring that the quality and the rigging of not just the net material but the full structure of the net is all controlled within the factory. So they actually manufacture and produce their own ropes in the factory, if that's correct, and that allows them to have this much more robust rigging solutions. So, because net material is of course only part of the choice. So you mentioned there a little bit about the end there about the progression onto HDPE netting, which is quite critical for, or the industry seems to believe it's quite critical for predation control. So can you tell us a bit about the advantages of HDPE?
Yeah, so the HDPE that we've developed, which is called the super product, gives us an advantage in terms, we produce it ourselves in FISA extruder, and it's extruded with all these special additives, giving the product higher tenacity and better abrasion resistance and UV resistance, so providing for the longevity of the net. All this is added into it. However, we've also been able to maintain a lighter weight to the net, which is very important also for the customer, because it's more sustainable. They're using less material. It's easier to transport. It's easier to manipulate it. So the super, that's with the predator netting. It makes it a very powerful, strong product. It's braided with a knot as well, so it's much thicker and tougher for the predators to get through the netting, while the abrasion is withstanding all of the friction that's going on in the cages, in the net pens, with the storms. And the UV as well, obviously, which is a big degrader of netting, over time is taking longer for it because of the anti-UV additives that are added to this product.
That's great. And also, I believe that with HDPE we have other methodologies for the core of the product. So one particular brand you talk about is Ultra Core Plus, but also steel wire within the product is possible.
Correct. So within our super netting, we do have a variety of options as well. One of our newer products, which we developed in the Chilean market now, due to the problems with the predator netting, is the Super Extra Core. The Extra Core is called the Extra Core Plus because the core is actually made up, traditionally in a knotted netting, the core is made out of filaments. In the Extra Core, what we've done is we've made a braided net that's as a core. So you've got the braided netting with a braided net inside the core. And inside that braided net core, we've added some polyester filaments and ultra high molecular polyethylene from DSM, Dyneema. So the polyester helps it so that it sinks a bit, so it's easier for sinking, whereas the ultra high molecular polyethylene is giving it an extra strength. So as the predators are biting in and they get to the very bottom, if they've made it through the two cores, they also then have the ultra high molecular polyethylene in there, which is like a stainless steel but stronger.
So you can see that the choice of material and how it's constructed, it's not just about the raw material, but how it's constructed that's critical to ensure predator control. And on top of that, we then have to think of operationally how the nets are used on the farms as well. So of course we need to make sure that it's not just a heavy net, because of course it's got to be manually manipulated for whatever reasons. So all these technologies that we're talking about here are all preventing predation, but of course still operationally very, very, very beneficial. And just coming away from HDPE a second, you also have on the stand today, or we have on the stand today, nylon and polyester, which to the naked eye might look very, very similar. I know you're very able to tell us the difference. So can you maybe just tell us a little bit about what the benefits and features are of those two materials as well?
Yep, that's correct. If somebody looks at the nylon or polyester net, it's almost impossible to tell the difference. You wouldn't tell it. However, the characteristics are very different. The polyester weighs a bit more for the same breaking strength as a nylon net. However, the polyester has a much stronger abrasion resistance, as I mentioned before, to the nylon net. The polyester has better UV resistance to a nylon net. And it's actually also a much more competitive price. because there's a lot more polyester used. The filament, nylon and polyester are used for tire production. That's the big market of these things. There's a lot more manufacturing of polyester in the world for the tires. Hence the price is a lot better, a lot more competitive. So it looks like a much better option in terms of all that, the polyester, which quite a few customers have gone towards that just because of the competitive price, even though it has the advantages of the abrasion and the UV. However, it really depends on the use, because the nylon, it has the advantage that it is lighter weight for the same brake strength as a polyester. And the nylon also has more elongation than the polyester. So in some places there are customers which find that they need a product which can elongate better, and therefore they would go for the nylon. So that's the two main differences between the nylon and polyester is the elongation. The nylon will have more elongation, less than polyester. The nylon will be lighter weight, whereas the polyester though will have a better abrasion resistance and a better UV resistance. There's also one big issue with the polyester that's nice is that the shrinkage. Polyester does shrink a lot less than nylon. So that is an advantage that some customers find that they need, because as it's shrinking less, you find that you need to make less repairs on the netting, which saves you a lot of money in the long run.
So I suspect then also that if you purchase a nylon net and it's new, it will be loose, the material will be loose because people will oversize to allow the shrinkage to happen later.
That's correct.
Then of course your predators have much more purchase if it's a loose net. So yeah, so you can see that choice of material is important in the sense of predation control, because of course different materials have different benefits, and the way they behave not only in sunlight but in the water is critical to ensure that it's a nice tight product. And if you think about the setup and the logistics of using a net on a farm as well, you start thinking then of course about pens. Now we're not here to talk about pens today, but the pen structure needs to be robust. You need to have a heavy sinker tube on there to hold the shape, and all this forms part of the overall decision about your predation control. So it's not just a net, it's not just a pen, it's lots of things that come together. So that's really interesting. Thank you, Yoni.